Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a corner of the digital asset world that is, frankly, pretty baffling to many, often hilarious and consistently, well, let's just say volatile. We're talking about meme coins.
Yeah, it's a space that really defies a lot of traditional financial logic. I mean, it operates on principles that would make a seasoned investor just scratch their head.
Absolutely. And we've got our hands on a report here, an analytical report on meme coins, dynamics, risks, and future trajectories. This document gives us a chance to, cut through some of the noise and maybe understand what's actually going on with these things because the hype is just it's immense, but what's underneath?
Exactly. This report really digs into the why behind the headlines. It
Uh-huh.
tries to push past that surface level frenzy and look at the actual structures or maybe the lack thereof driving this whole phenomenon.
Right. So, our mission in this deep dive is to unpack what meme coins actually are, why they've become such a, well, massive thing, and critically, what impact, if any, they might have on you, the listener, trying to navigate this digital landscape. Get ready for a world the report suggests is built less on code and more on, well, internet jokes and maybe group chat energy.
It's a fascinating study, really, in how collective belief and, cultural resonance can manifest in these really unexpected financial ways.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. And honestly, the definition itself is kind of where the absurdity kicks in. What is a meme coin, according to this source material?
So the report defines them as a pretty unique category of cryptocurrency, born directly from internet culture, popular memes. They often start quite deliberately as just a joke or a kind of parody of the whole crypto space.
And this is where the fundamental difference pops up, right? It's not like Bitcoin, which was meant as, digital gold or Ethereum, a platform for apps. The report points out that meme coins typically lack. Well, they lack a defined tech foundation, they don't have a detailed white paper saying what they're for, and usually no tangible practical use cases at all.
That's really the core distinction. Their value isn't coming from utility, not from a function within some network or ecosystem. The report states their value is driven primarily by just fervent community participation, widespread market speculation, and their power as cultural symbols.
So, okay, what are the defining characteristics then, beyond just being funny pictures online?
The report highlights a few key things. They're intensely community driven, so value is heavily influenced by collective enthusiasm, online buzz, Reddit threads, that sort of thing. They're also defined by extremely high volatility, prices. They're prone to these dramatic surges or just, huge drops, often triggered by not much more than investor sentiment, social media trends, or even just a single tweet from someone famous.
Yeah, that volatility is legendary
Yeah.
and frankly terrifying. They also often have this element of cultural symbolism and entertainment value you mentioned. It's often more about engaging with a cultural moment or identifying with an online group than it is about making a serious investment.
Precisely. And maybe most psychologically important, many meme coins have an absolutely enormous supply. We're talking trillions, sometimes quadrillions of tokens, which means the price per coin is tiny.
Oh, yes, the I can buy a billion for $5 appeal, that whole thing.
Exactly. And the report notes this really enhances their psychological appeal to a broad audience. You can buy millions, maybe billions of these coins for not much money, fueling that fantasy of, wow, if this just goes up a fraction of a cent.
So, this fundamental lack of utility, it makes them stand apart drastically from other kinds of digital tokens.
Oh, completely. You compare them to stable coins, right? Pegged to the dollar for stability. Or utility tokens, where the value is tied to a specific function on a platform. Or even asset-backed tokens, representing real stuff like gold or real estate. Meme coins, they operate on entirely different principles. It's a different universe.
They're even different from a lot of other altcoins, many of which at least, try to solve a problem or build some tech. Meme coins, by this report's definition, are often just pure community and hype.
The report basically positions meme coins as the absolute riskiest type of digital asset, precisely because there's no utility, no asset backing, and these movements are just so unpredictable, driven by sentiment. It calls their value a social construct, driven by humor, cultural affinity, speculation, kind of like collectibles, where the value is totally subjective, depends only on what the next person is willing to pay.
So, if you're buying a meme coin, you're essentially buying into a joke, a social phenomenon, maybe, and just hoping that other people find that joke or community engaging enough to pay more later on. It's a total departure from how value works in, well, normal
It
finance.
completely turns traditional valuation on its head. Value is just perceived popularity. How much buzz is there?
So how did this bizarre corner of the market even, like, get started? Let's touch on the brief and, yeah, often amusing history.
Well, the report traces their emergence back to that whole altcoin boom that happened after Bitcoin got big.
Right.
While lots of altcoins were trying for technical innovation, meme coins found their niche in parody and cultural commentary.
In the pioneer, that was Dogecoin, right? DOGE, way back in December 2013.
Yes, created by engineers Billy Marcus and Jackson Palmer. Explicitly inspired by the Doge internet meme, the Shiba Inu dog picture. It was really intended as a lighthearted joke, a playful poke at how serious Bitcoin was taking itself.
And yet, even though it started as a joke, Dogecoin somehow gained this significant following. The community even rallied behind charitable causes, remember? Like sending the Jamaican bobsled team to the Olympics. It showed you could be a parody and still do tangible things through just collective action.
Social media was key, especially early Reddit communities. That was absolutely critical for Dogecoin's growth. It was the place for discussion, building the community, and even early online tipping using the coin.
And you see how leveraging these really ingrained cultural symbols like the Doge meme that existed before the coin, they give it a huge head start compared to tokens based on some fleeting trend. The cultural thing provided a ready-made audience almost.
It provided that crucial initial hook, yeah. And of course, the report highlights high-profile endorsements,
Yeah.
particularly from Elon Musk. That was a major catalyst. His mentions just rocketed Dogecoin into mainstream awareness and fueled those absolutely spectacular price surges, leading to, an astonishing peak market cap of, was it $90 billion in May 2021?
$90 billion for a literal joke coin. That's the kind of number that just screams pure speculation, doesn't it? And the report notes that the technical ease of creating new tokens, especially on platforms like Ethereum with its ERC20 standard and later Solana, that significantly lowered the barrier. It directly contributed to this explosion of meme coins way beyond just Dogecoin.
Oh, absolutely. It made launching a token accessible to almost anyone with even, basic technical know-how, which dramatically increased the sheer number and variety of meme coins just flooding the market.
So if the value isn't based on what the token does, what is driving these astronomical, often really fleeting valuations? What are the fundamentals of this market as the report sees them, if you can use that word?
The report is very, very clear on this. The primary drivers are social media influence and community hype. Platforms like Reddit, X, formerly Twitter, they're engines for rapid viral information spread. That can ignite fervent enthusiasm almost overnight. The report even points to social media being a key factor in what it calls a meme coin supercycle.
It's like a perpetual motion machine of just buzz.
You could feel like that. And that gets amplified by celebrity endorsements. A mention from a well-known figure can cause immediate substantial price jumps. Elon Musk and Dogecoin, again, remain the prime, maybe controversial example.
And what does all this hype and viral spread inevitably lead to?
FOMO, the fear of missing out. That allure of potentially explosive returns fueled by stories you hear about people getting rich quick. It creates this powerful herd mentality, driving really impulsive buying. People jump in without thinking.
Liquidity and getting listed on big exchanges must matter too, right?
They do, definitely. Being listed on major exchanges like Binance or Coinbase makes a token way more accessible to a wider audience.
Yeah.
And it also lends it a sort of perceived legitimacy, even if that legitimacy isn't really based on fundamentals.
And the tokenomics, like how many coins there are.
Yes, the total supply and the inflation rate play a role. The report notes that a massive inflationary supply, like Dogecoin originally had, can kind of put a cap on potential long-term price gains, whereas a limited supply, like Shiba Inu aimed for, can try to foster a sense of scarcity.
And they're incredibly sensitive to the overall crypto market mood. If Bitcoin's rallying, meme coins often go completely nuts, but in a downturn, they crash even harder.
The report characterizes this market dynamic pretty starkly, actually. It describes it as basically a greater fool game. You buy not because you believe in any intrinsic value, but purely in the hope that someone else, the greater fool, will come along later and be willing to pay even more for it than you did.
Wow, that reliance on a continuous stream of new buyers, that sounds incredibly precarious.
It is. It makes price crashes almost inevitable when sentiment shifts, or when the supply of new people willing to play the greater fool just dries up.
Yeah.
So yes, for meme coins, social media buzz, community energy, celebrity shoutouts, that is their de facto fundamental analysis. The value isn't in the tech, it's in the tweet or the meme.
So, despite this inherently shaky foundation, Why are people drawn to invest, and I'm using air quotes there, in these things? And what are the truly massive risks involved?
Well, there are undeniable attractions, right? The community effect and viral spread. They're powerful. Robust community support generates significant attention and enthusiasm. And like we mentioned with Dogecoin, some communities have even done tangible positive things like charity drives.
And that potential for explosive short-term returns is a huge draw, isn't it? While it's incredibly risky, the possibility of making just extraordinary gains really quickly is what captures people's imaginations. Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, they saw percentage increases that are almost impossible to comprehend in traditional markets. And again, that low price per coin lets people buy vast quantities, amplifying that psychological thrill of a potential moonshot. You feel like you own a lot.
And for some people, honestly, it's just entertainment. It's cultural participation. It's engaging with online culture, identifying with a meme or a community. Or maybe it's just a less intimidating way into the confusing world of crypto. It feels more approachable, perhaps, than trying to understand complex blockchain protocols. Okay. Those are the carrots. Now, let's talk about the very, very big sticks. What does the report say about the risks? Because it sounds like they're huge. It pulls absolutely no punches. The biggest risk, hands down, is the lack of any real-world use case or intrinsic value. Most of these coins lack any underlying technology or innovation. The value is purely speculation, highly dependent on sentiment that can change on a dime. This leads to extreme price instability and the very real potential for a total, complete loss of whatever you put in.
And the high volatility itself is just a major risk factor.
Absolutely. Prices swing wildly, unpredictably. This is exceptionally risky, particularly for anyone who doesn't have a really high-risk tolerance or, frankly, sophisticated risk management strategies, which most retail buyers probably don't.
And the report calls many of them. What was the term?
Speculative bubbles, largely driven by hype. They fit the classic definition of a financial bubble. If that hype fades, prices can plummet sharply and rapidly, often leaving the people who bought in late holding basically worthless digital tokens.
And they're highly susceptible to market manipulation. That sounds dangerous.
This is a critical danger the report really highlights. Meme coins are highly vulnerable to manipulation by large holders, people call them whales, or by coordinated groups online. Pump and dump schemes are rampant. That's where insiders artificially inflate the price with a ton of hype on social media. Then they sell off their holdings, they dump, crashing the value and leaving everyone else who bought into the hype with heavy losses.
And the even more malicious rug pulls. Tell me about those.
Yeah, those are nasty. That's where the developers behind the coin simply abandon the project altogether. They steal the funds that were raised, or they drain the liquidity pools that allow trading, and then they just disappear.
Yeah.
Making the investors' tokens effectively worthless overnight. These often involve anonymous teams and promises that seem way too good to be true. Because, well, they are.
The report notes that the unregulated nature of this market attracts outright scams and fraud, too, like fake coins, misleading promotions, even compromised celebrity accounts on social media can be used to push fraudulent schemes.
And the hype itself fuels emotional investing. People make impulsive decisions driven by FOMO, by that fear of missing out rather than any calm analysis, which of course only amplifies losses when the inevitable downturns happen.
There's a paradox the report highlights here. The very accessibility that makes meme coins attractive to new users also, paradoxically, exposes them to these huge systemic risks like pump and dumps and rug pulls. Easy access doesn't mean safety. It means potentially easier access for the manipulators to find victims.
Exactly. And that lack of comprehensive, specific regulation for meme coins, particularly in the US, where they often aren't classified as securities, it creates what the report calls a legal minefield. Fraud can happen with fewer immediate consequences, and investors are largely left unprotected by the federal securities laws that are designed for traditional investments.
Wow. It paints a pretty grim picture of the risk landscape, really.
It's certainly a landscape where extreme caution is more than warranted. It's essential.
Let's take a quick tour through the meme coin zoo then, looking at some prominent examples mentioned in the report. Who's who?
All right. Leading the pack still is Dogecoin, D-O-G-E. The pioneer, born from the meme, famously boosted by Musk, still used occasionally for tipping and charity, and it maintains the largest market cap among meme coins.
Then there's Shiba Inu, SHEPS, often framed as the Dogecoin killer. It's built on Ethereum, boasts this massive dedicated community, the SHIB army, and it has been trying to build out a broader ecosystem, including like decentralized finance tools, trying to add some utility.
Pepe, B-P-E-E. Based on the controversial Puppy the Shrug meme. It's known for particularly extreme volatility driven purely by social media hype, and it has a truly mind-boggling supply number, something like 420 trillion tokens.
Bonk, B-O-N-K, notable as one of the first big meme coins on the Solana blockchain. It marketed itself as the people's dog coin. It gained traction partly through a very large airdrop, giving away 50% of its supply to the Solana community, and it has its own little ecosystem pieces, like a DX.
FUQ Opia, another dog-themed coin, this one apparently inspired by Elon Musk's own dog, named Floki. It has a strong community, the Floki Vikings, and it's also attempting to build a more utility-focused ecosystem, including a metaverse game called Valhalla.
Dog with that, W-I-F. That's another prominent one on Solana that gains significant popularity through viral trends and community engagement. Mostly famous for the meme, right? The dog wearing a hat.
That's the one. And the report also mentions Trump Coin, Trump, which is linked to Donald J. Trump, launched in January 2025. The report discusses its existence and market behavior, noting its volatility after launch and mentioning discussions around its potential for pump and dump dynamics. And it's important, as the report does, to just state the facts of its existence and market action neutrally here without, endorsing or critiquing the political figure or the coin itself.
Absolutely. Just reporting what's in the source material. The report even included a table showing the market caps for some of these, and the numbers are huge. It demonstrates the sheer scale of speculative money sloshing around.
Yeah, it really illustrates that paradox of massive perceived value built on foundations that are, well, mostly air and memes.
What about the technology underneath all this? They must be built on something, right? They're not just like digital vapor.
No, they do leverage existing established blockchain technology. They run on networks, just like other cryptocurrencies do.
So like Ethereum for many of them.
Many are, yes. Tokens like SHAB and PPE are typically ERC20 tokens. They live on the Ethereum blockchain, benefiting from its wide user base, its development tools, all that infrastructure.
And newer ones seem to be flocking to Solana.
Correct. BONKWIF and a lot of the recent wave are on Solana. They're drawn by its high speed and significantly lower transaction costs compared to Ethereum, especially before some of the recent Ethereum upgrades. Solana's tech, that proof of history thing, allows for much higher transaction throughput.
And the older ones, like Dogecoin, where do they live?
Dogecoin is actually based on a fork of the Bitcoin blockchain technology. It's kind of its own thing, sometimes referred to as Dogechain.
A key point the report makes, though, is how incredibly easy it is to create these tokens on platforms like Ethereum and Solana, with minimal technical expertise.
Yes. That ease of creation is absolutely fundamental to the whole meme coin phenomenon. It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry, which facilitates this rapid proliferation. But it also contributes to the unpredictable prices and, frankly, the high potential for scams. A common distribution method is using airdrops, just giving away free tokens to try and build a large holder base really quickly.
And while Solana's efficiency might be good for fast trading, the report notes it also kind of lowers the barrier for fraudulent schemes too. The same tech that enables fast, cheap transactions also enables fast, cheap scams.
It's a significant downside, yeah. And the report points out that all this meme coin activity isn't consequence-free for the underlying blockchains either. It can seriously increase network fees and cause congestion, which impacts legitimate utility-focused applications and users who are relying on the same network. So these speculative coins can have a tangible negative economic impact on the infrastructure everyone else uses.
So it's built on real tech, but often in a way that facilitates speculation and maybe even hinders other more productive uses. Speaking of the darker side, this market truly sounds like the Wild West. What's the regulatory picture actually like? Is anyone watching?
Well, the regulatory landscape is complex, fragmented, uncertain. In the U.S., the report notes the SEC's general stance, historically, is that typical meme coins are not classified as securities under federal law.
And that's based on the Howey test, that old legal standard.
Precisely. The SEC's argument often hinges on the idea that buying meme coins isn't usually considered an investment in a common enterprise, and that any expectation of profit isn't solely from the efforts of others, like a company's management, but rather from pure market speculation, more akin to, say, collecting baseball cards or something. And they typically don't grant rights to income or underlying business assets. Their primary purpose is often characterized as entertainment, social engagement, that sort of thing.
But the absolutely critical implication of this non-security classification that the report really emphasizes this is a devastating lack of investor protection under those federal securities laws.
This is the core regulatory risk for anyone getting involved. The protections that are designed to prevent fraud and manipulation in traditional securities markets. They just don't apply to these assets in the same way. It leaves investors highly vulnerable.
And this also creates broader regulatory uncertainty, right? If the SEC isn't fully covering it, who is? Or who might?
Well, other agencies might assert authority. The CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, could view them as commodities and potentially regulate fraud or manipulation, especially in derivatives markets if those develop. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, can target deceptive advertising practices related to meme coins. And state-level oversight is definitely increasing, with some states issuing warnings about the risks and their potential use in illicit finance.
The report even mentions legislative proposals, like a potential meme act aimed at stopping public officials from endorsing meme coins, which highlights how this market intersects with, public trust and influence.
It really underscores the real-world impact and concern surrounding what started as simple internet jokes.
So, is it actually illegal to just create a meme coin?
Generally speaking, creating one isn't universally illegal. It really depends on the jurisdiction. Many countries lack specific laws banning the simple act of creating a token.
And this seems like a big but existing laws against fraud, scams, misleading investors. Those do still apply.
Absolutely. Laws against pump and dumps, rug pulls, and outright fraud are definitely still enforceable. Developers do have obligations regarding transparency and avoiding deception. The report even cites an example of a lawsuit involving a meme coin called HRWK, where the allegation was that it was an unregistered security because the way it was marketed specifically created expectations of profits tied directly to the promoter's efforts, which could make it look more like a security under that Howey test.
Ah, okay. So while the token itself might often dodge the security classification, the actions of the creators or promoters can absolutely cross legal lines.
Precisely. But the report concludes that the overall regulatory landscape is fragmented and, frankly, reactive. Agencies often step in only after significant fraud or harm has already occurred. This piecemeal approach, combined with the lack of any unified global framework, creates significant uncertainty and leaves a lot of systemic issues largely unaddressed.
It's certainly not a picture of robust consumer protection, is it?
No, far from it.
So given all this, the joke origins, the hype-driven valuations, the massive risks, this regulatory vacuum, what's next for this bizarre meme-iverse? Is it all just a bubble waiting to pop, or could it actually evolve into something else?
Well, the report acknowledges the future is highly debated and pretty uncertain. Bubble versus sustained phenomenon that remains the central question. However, it does point to some emerging trends that suggest a potential path towards evolution, maybe?
Like trying to add actual utility. You mentioned that earlier.
Exactly. Some newer meme coins, or even older ones like Ajiv and FUQ IS, are actively attempting to build out utility functions. They're integrating with decentralized finance, or DeFi, developing games, adding staking rewards or governance features, even exploring roles as, like, gas tokens on Layer 2 networks. This represents a kind of strategic pivot away from pure speculation towards trying to build something more sustainable.
They're trying to become, well, not just meme coins anymore.
In essence, yeah. They're trying to graft some traditional crypto utility onto the meme coin brand and community energy. The report also mentions the potential influence of AI and machine learning being explored. People looking at using AI to maybe optimize liquidity pools, automate trading strategies, manage token burns, or even enhance community engagement. The hope there is potentially for more stable or data-driven operations. Though, ironically, AI could also just become a more sophisticated tool for amplifying the virality and hype even further.
And more integration with DeFi and NFTs seems like everything's converging.
Yes, definitely. Integrating into yield farming protocols, creating specialized, decentralized exchanges specifically designed for meme coins, maybe aiming for reduced slippage, multi-chain farming strategies, and blurring the lines with NFTs, perhaps releasing meme coin components as rewards tied to digital collectibles. There's also a growing emphasis, maybe surprisingly, on linking meme coins to social causes or environmental initiatives.
But the expert opinions cited in the report still sound pretty skeptical overall, don't they?
They do. Skepticism regarding any intrinsic value remains very high among many traditional crypto analysts and commentators. Many still dismiss the whole sector as a speculative nonsense or just a popularity contest where prices have little correlation with any fundamental value. The future is seen as highly uncertain, with views split between this being just a fleeting trend or maybe a permanent, albeit extremely risky, fixture of the crypto landscape.
But that trend towards attempting utility, that offers at least a potential path to some kind of legitimacy beyond just pure speculation.
It's probably seen as the only path to potential long-term viability, really. Factors the report suggests could contribute to future success include, timing, managing to get listed on major exchanges, having smart tokenomics, maintaining strong cultural relevance, maybe securing genuine celebrity endorsements, and crucially, introducing actual demonstrable utility or some kind of real innovation, not just promises.
The challenges are still immense, though. That inherent volatility isn't going away easily. The dependence on fleeting hype, the ease of creation leading to constant market saturation with new coins, and that ongoing regulatory uncertainty. The cycle of explosive hype followed by brutal crashes seems like a constant risk.
Huge risks, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the unique opportunities are also present. That incredible ability to tap into internet culture and viral trends, the power of a genuinely engaged and passionate community. Integration with DeFi and NFTs could add substance. And the report does acknowledge the potential for this space, however chaotic it seems, to drive rapid creative experimentation in digital economies, even if most experiments fail.
So, we've taken a deep dive into meme coins from their origins as literally a joke and a parody, to their current status as these highly volatile, almost purely speculative assets, propelled by social media and community hype, existing in a largely unregulated environment, and just riddled with potential pitfalls like manipulation and outright scams.
Yeah, the overwhelming message from the source material we looked at is really one of extreme caution for anyone even thinking about getting involved. Know what you're getting into.
It's clear this is a truly fascinating, often utterly ridiculous phenomenon that really highlights how value is being created or maybe just perceived in entirely new ways in our digitally connected world. It's weird.
It certainly challenges a lot of traditional notions of what constitutes an asset or what makes a sound investment. It's different.
So, after hearing all this, what stands out to you, our listener? Does the power of community-driven value intrigue you, even if it's built on, well, a dog picture? Or does the inherent risk, the potential for total loss, and the blatant manipulation described just make you want to steer completely clear?
It raises a really fundamental question, doesn't it? In a world where online culture holds such enormous sway, can something born purely from a meme or a fleeting social trend genuinely acquire lasting value? Or is it destined to remain just a fleeting, maybe exciting, but ultimately purely speculative game?
Consider this. Could the very concept of what an asset even is be fundamentally changed by the internet age, moving away from traditional metrics like cash flow or utility and towards something closer to, I don't know, collective attention and shared cultural symbols? Even if most current meme coins are simply that, just symbols.
It's definitely a thought worth mulling over as this space continues to evolve, or maybe implode, we'll see.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope this helped you cut through some of the hype and maybe get a clearer, perhaps more skeptical picture of this truly bizarre corner of the market.